A video on how I care for my Dubia Roaches has been pretty highly requested in the past. It's just that I never had the time to, well, not had the time, I didn't find a time when I was not lazy to film this video. And guys, it's Dubia Roaches, not Dubai Roaches. I don't know why people keep calling them Dubai Roaches. These roaches are from South America. They're not from Dubai in the Middle East. Now, before anything, I want to say that this video, this type of Dubia video, is all over YouTube. It's all over. You can find all these information online. I'm just doing it because it's been requested to show you guys how I keep mine. A lot of the informations in this video were picked and plucked from other videos and online sources. It's just that I'm presenting it in my own way. Okay, so let's enter the Dubia Lair. This here on the left is a male Dubia. As you can see, he has much longer wings than his female counter. Oh my god, oh my gosh, yeah. He has much larger wings than his female girlfriend over here. She has little stubby wings. So you see these two on this side? These are the female's wings. They're really small and pretty much useless. She can't do anything with them. The males, however, they cannot fly, but they can glide. I'll show you that later on in the video. Alright, these little guys, try to get one. This is a nymph, a newborn nymph. This is pretty much the size of them when they are just born. These guys don't lay eggs. They are live bearers. Sometimes you can see a female with an egg sac coming out of her butt, but that egg sac will be brought back into her and she will give live birth. Now, one of the good things about breeding dubias is you'll have all different sizes for your different animals. Now let me get one that is, let's see, yeah, like this. This is the perfect size for an adult leopard gecko. See? And then right before they mature out into adults, they'll be around this size. So in a molt or two, this little guy will turn into something like this. It's a female. Okay, so these guys, from the moment they are born, when they're about that size, till the point they're an adult, like this size, it takes them about 4 to 6 months, depending on the temperature and how much you feed them. Now, females, I read they can get 1.5 to about 2 years old. Males, like this guy, on the other hand, they live about 1 year to 1.5 years. So don't be surprised if your dubia bin, you find a lot of dead males on the floor. That's probably just of them dying from old age. Okay, when you're breeding these guys, one important thing to keep note is your ratios of males to females. The most recommended one would be 1 male to about 3 females, but 1 male to about 4 females would work as well. If you have too many males and too little females, males, they will fight with each other for competition. Yep, even roaches fight for females. And another thing, if you have too many males, there is a possibility that some males will eat other males' babies. So yeah, pretty brutal, but that's the reality of the insect world. A lot of people make a mistake when they buy new dubia colonies. They start feeding off their dubias to their animals right away. That's like the biggest mistake you can ever do. The best is to leave them for about 6 months at least. 1 year would be the best. Leave them for quite a while to mate and get your colony running. Because like I mentioned previously, they take about 4 to 6 months to mature from when they're born. So if you feed them off too quickly, they won't have the chance to breed and establish your colony. Okay, it's a good practice to add in new bloodline into your colony, as in new roaches from different, how do I say this? Different family tree? I don't know. Family tree? Yeah, I think that worked. You can get that from other breeders, because if you don't do that, if your roaches keep inbreeding with each other, their lifespans will get shortened by quite a bit. If you have a relatively large colony, you may notice that you have quite a number of dead roaches on the ground. But you don't have to worry too much on these dead bodies, because if your colony is really big, these roaches are pretty clean, so they will clean up after their dead ancestors, which sounds pretty gross. But yes, they will eat up dead bodies of other roaches. Okay, so I think I've covered enough for the introduction of these roaches. Now we'll move on to the pros, which is also known as the benefits and advantages of keeping these roaches. Number one, they are clean. They are very, very clean animals. Apart from their poop on the ground, oh, one just fell. They are very clean roaches. They don't make a huge mess. Even dead bodies, like I mentioned, they clean it up for you. You don't even have to have dermestid beetles in here. They will do the cleaning, everything. They even groom themselves. I've come across roaches grooming themselves, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Ow! Damn it! No! Nah, just kidding, guys. These guys are harmless. They can't do anything to you. They can't even break skin. They don't bite. Okay, so I've mentioned females can't fly. Nymphs can't fly as well. But the males, okay. Now, these guys have long wings, right? They can't fly, alright? Flying and gliding are two different things. I'll show you. If you take a male dubia and put it on the floor, all it's gonna do is run away. Because that's all these guys can do. But let's put a little twist in this. If you put him on a high surface, did you see that? As he was falling down from the chair, his wings opened. That's pretty much gliding. This guy, if you put him on the ground, he will not just take off. Because these guys are not meant to fly. They're meant to glide. Alright, I'll toss this guy up in the air and you'll see him glide downwards. But did you just see his wings open? But that's not gliding. Let's try this again. There you go. You saw that? That's gliding. He just opened his wings to land safely on the ground. He cannot take off and just fly at you like these American and German cockroaches. No, 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 no. Those guys are nasty. So that's another pro, because for some people, flying cockroaches, yeah, it's not a thing. Next. What? Come on, man. You can do better than that. One last time. Yep. So there we go. These guys cannot climb smooth plastic. A lot of people put packaging tape on the sides or Vaseline. But for these dubias, really, you don't really need that when you have a smooth plastic. But of course, you can do precautions if you want. I'm not stopping you to do that. But as for me, a smooth tub will keep these guys in. Next pro. Uric. You like the smell? No smell? Right? What's that? What's that? Yep, no smell, right? Yep, exactly. These guys don't have smell to them. Well, they do have a unique smell that is not really strong, but it's not bad at all. Okay, now I'm gonna bring you guys a little bit closer into their lair.
How do you like that chirping sound? Exactly. There isn't any. This is pretty much the only sound you're gonna hear. It's not bad at all, is it?
So that brings me to my next pro. These guys are not noisy like crickets. They're pretty silent. That's the only thing you're gonna hear. These sounds. And these sounds aren't that bad if you don't open the egg crates. The reason they were so loud is because I opened the egg crate, so all of them started panicking when there's light. Usually when it's dark, they are even quieter. You probably won't even hear these scratching noises. Of course, you don't compare these to crickets when it comes to moving, because crickets, they jump. They barely even walk fast. But these guys, compared to the Turkestan roaches or the American and German house cockroaches, which creep me out, these guys are relatively slow moving. See? They don't really move too quickly that frightens people. Look at this guy. It's taking forever to get off this egg crate. My next point is temperature. These guys, I will get on to this temperature thing later in the care sheet, but these guys need a pretty high tropical temperature to survive and breed well. So if these guys, you throw them into some cold climate, they're most likely just gonna drop dead. So if you guys live in a cold climate area, which I know most of you guys are, looking at my audience, UK, US, yeah. These guys, if they do escape in your house, they're not gonna infest your house. But if they escape in my house, I live in a tropical environment, temperatures about 85 to like 95 degrees every single day. So these guys will thrive and they will breed and possibly infest my house. But you guys living in the West, I don't think you guys have to worry too much, unless it's in the summer. But then the winter, they'll die. The next good thing about these guys is look how fat they are. They are literally full of meat. And this is because these guys have a very long digestive tract compared to crickets. If you feed crickets fruits and vegetables, like to gut load them, they will poop the next day. These guys, they will keep the gut load in them for a relatively longer period of time, which makes them even more nutritious for feeding your animals. Now we're going to talk about chitin. I'm not sure if I said that correctly or not, but chitin is pretty much what their exoskeletons are made out of. Chitin is they're fibrous and indigestible. So if your animal eats something with a lot of chitin, like let's say mealworms, it's not gonna digest really well as compared to feeding dubias, because these guys, chitin to meat ratio is less. Chitin, they don't have a lot of strong chitin, if that makes sense. So it's good if for your animals to eat and successfully digest these guys. And last but not least, boom! These guys are tasty. Isn't it tasty, girl? Yep, a lot of animals do enjoy eating dubias, including tarantulas. So those are the pros of keeping dubias that I can think of. If any of you think I've missed out something, do comment down below so those who are watching and wants to get into dubias, they'll know. Now, we're gonna move on to the cons, which is also known as the disadvantages. There we go. First disadvantage to feeding dubias is, what on earth is this guy doing? Exactly, it's playing dead. So these guys like to play dead, and a lot of animals that eat insects are usually looking for movement as well as vibrations on the ground. That's for tarantulas. And with these guys, yeah, he came back to life. But usually when they play dead, they can play dead for a long time, and that will discourage the animal to find and eat them. There are times that I've seen these roaches just play dead for more than an hour, believe it or not. And that can be a real pain, especially when I'm filming feeding videos, because the tarantula just doesn't know that the roach is there, and I'll just be waiting and waiting and waiting, and nothing ever happens. Next disadvantage. Look at what it's doing. Exactly, it's burrowing. And this can be a real pain. Within few seconds, they disappear. And then the tarantula has to go dig to get him out, just for him to play dead again. So yep, that's the only two cons that I could think of. One, whatever this guy is doing right now. And number two, when they go underground and stay there forever. Thank you for your cooperation. Now is the time we move on to how we care for these Dubia roaches. Okay, now you want to house them in a tub like this. Something that is dark on the inside and smooth on the sides. So when you open it, it's pretty dark in there. It's just because there's light that you can see the egg crates. But if not, it's pretty dark. And that's because these dubias are afraid of light. They just don't like light. These guys are nocturnal. So when there is light, they will go underground or deeper into the bottom of the egg crates. And that's the thing. You probably could house them in an aquarium, a clear aquarium, but you want them to feel secure in order for them to thrive and breed well. If they are stressed from clear containers, they're gonna breed. Definitely they're gonna breed for you, but maybe not so prolifically. Next, tub size. This is how big my tub is compared to my hand. Now, my colony is pretty large already, so this works. But if you're just starting out with a few males and a few females, you want to get something smaller so they can find each other and breed. Maybe something like that blue one outside there. That one is relatively smaller and works well. And I just mentioned earlier in this video that you will want a tub with smooth sides. Don't get the ones with rubberized sides. I know some tubs are like a rubber material or anything that has like cuts and shapes, and the best is smooth and round. That way they can't climb up. And if you have these smooth surfaces on the sides, you don't need packaging tape or Vaseline. But also make sure it's 90 degrees. If it's slanting out, they can probably still climb. Now, one of the most important things with dubia keeping is ventilation. You will want a lot, I mean a lot of ventilation. This is my Turkestan roach bin and ventilation net as well. You don't want to just have like a tub and you just stab holes like this. This is what I did last time. Just stab holes and stuff. That's not gonna be enough. You want to cut out like a big part of the cover and hot glue on these nettings. That way there's always enough airflow in and out. You could stab holes if you want, but make sure it's like a lot like this. And that's gonna probably take you a few days to do this whole thing. So the best is cut a big piece out, several, makes it better, and just hot glue. Or you can even tie them up with wire if you want. You can get these netting screens or whatever you want to call it, filter screens. Yeah, you can get these aluminium ones from any hardware store really. They're really cheap. They come in these rolls, these long rolls. Just tell them how much you want, like a meter or something. When it comes to dubias, you don't even need a lid, to be honest. You can just leave them open like this, which gives them more ventilation. And it's even better for them really. But the thing is, I use a lid because we have these house lizards every night. You know, these house geckos, they stick on the walls and eat whatever insects. Now, when those guys find out I have roaches, they will come through here for the side. Somehow they manage to squeeze in and get in, which I have no idea how they do it. So, what I do, if you have this problem, what I do is use these clips and just clip the sides like that. So that way, there's no room for them to squeeze in. So if I don't have a lid, makes it even worse. There was once I didn't clean out my bin for a while, and then one day I decided to. I moved all the egg crates, and then this huge house gecko, it was fat. It has been feasting on probably these small nymphs, and it just ran out, and I was like, whoa, that's the biggest, most healthiest gecko I've ever seen. House gecko, that is. Because usually these guys, they're on the walls and they're eating these small mosquitoes and stuff like that, and they're really thin. But then, when that one entered my dubia bin, the weight on that guy, the fatness, jeez, it was chunky. So I don't want those nasties feeding on my dubias, because you don't know what They may carry mites, they may carry parasites, and then transfer stuff to my dubias, and nope. No. These dubias are only for my animals. Ain't that right, Elvarg? Yeah? Like dubias? You'll get one later. You can also poke ventilation holes on the sides. I bet that will be better. It'll make it more beneficial because there's airflows coming from the sides as well. But I just have the top on, and it has worked for me for years, so I may do the sides as well. What happens if you don't have enough ventilation like this? Number one, you're gonna get mold, because mold comes when there's humidity build up in an area and there's not enough ventilation and airflow, so mold starts to grow, which is nasty, especially when these guys poop. You don't want mold to grow on their poop, because when humidity builds up in this thing, because it's plastic, right? So their poop will get really nasty and mold will just start sprouting everywhere, and that is very, very dangerous. The biggest enemy of roaches are mold, mites, and ants. These three things can wipe out your entire colony of thousands, even 10,000. They'll wipe out all of the roaches within a week, maybe at most 2 weeks, but it's really quick. And once you have those, it's really hard to get rid of them. So it's always good to take precaution. For mold, ventilation, keep inside dry. For mites, okay, I did mention previously earlier in this video that you would want to add a new bloodline. That's a good idea. And before you do so, make sure you check the new batch of roaches for mites. What you can do is, usually mites are underneath them, like in between their legs and under their necks. As for males, they'll usually be under the wings, so you check those places. If there's mites, don't mix them with your roaches, because mites spread really quickly and you don't want your roaches to just die off within a week. For ants, the only thing you really need to do is put Vaseline on the outside perimeter of your tub. That way the ants can't climb up because it's slippery. And also don't lean your tub against the wall, because then the ants can climb down the wall and onto your tub. Keep your tub alone somewhere in the room. And if you have the Vaseline on the sides, the ants won't be able to come up. If you're putting your tub on a table, put Vaseline around the table's legs. And of course, when you're feeding fruits and vegetables, which I'll get to that in just a bit, take them out after 24 hours at most, because that is one thing that will attract ants and all the nasty bugs and flies and fruit flies and all those things that you don't want in your bin. So keep your bin clean and your roaches will be clean for you. Now for the egg crates, you want to stack them up vertically. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people stack them up vertically, and this is because the poop will fall right to the bottom of the enclosure. If you were to stack up egg crates like this, the poop is just gonna collect and collect until it rots the egg crate and burns like a hole on the bottom. That's just gonna wear out your egg crates much faster. So to keep your egg crates good and solid, keep them vertical like this. Also, this is one thing that I just found out myself a couple months back. That time I noticed a lot of dubias have been just dying. Every day I come in, I have like 20 dead dubias. And I found out it was because I had my egg crates like in a row, like this, like all in one row. I think there were limited ventilation between the egg crates. So I switched it up a little bit. I put one here, like this, like alternate arrangements. And the roaches have been thriving ever since. So if you guys have your egg crates in one row and experiencing roaches dying, try this out. It might work. I mentioned about mold earlier. One more way to prevent that is to keep your enclosure dry as possible. I know a lot of people, they miss their enclosures. I don't do that because I'm paranoid when it comes to mold. If I miss this, the poop is just gonna absorb water, and if there's not enough ventilation to dry out the poop in time, mold will grow. And mold will, they'll start growing within 12 hours. So yeah, the best thing is to keep them dry. However, these roaches do need a little bit of humidity to molt successfully. So if you guys live in a very low humidity area, you can use this little bottle, put water in, and poke holes on the top. I've seen quite a lot of people do that. And the water will sort of evaporate and keep your enclosure a little bit humid. Should be sufficient enough for these roaches to molt successfully. But as for me, I live in a tropical place, so humidity is always around 70 to like 90%, so I don't really have to worry about that. What I have to worry is the enclosure and to keep it as dry as possible. The ideal temperature for these guys to successfully breed and live is between 80 degrees Fahrenheit to about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So in Celsius, that should be about 26 degrees Celsius to about 35 degrees Celsius. So if you guys live in a cold place, you want to find a way to heat up your enclosure. Use a heat mat with a thermostat, but whatever you do, don't use heat lamps, because I've mentioned that these guys are afraid of light. So if you have light, you're going to stress them out, and if you stress them out, they're not going to breed for you. If your temperature is below 68 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 20 degrees Celsius, these guys will not breed. They'll probably like hibernate or something. Or maybe even die. I'm not even sure. But to keep them from dying and having them to breed prolifically, keep your temperature from 80 to about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. As for their poop, if I'm not mistaken, these things are called frass. We will check that out on the internet in a moment. But you don't want to clean this out 100% every time you clean your bin, because the nymphs, they actually live in this and they feed on it, believe it or not. So if you take 100% of these out when you're cleaning, the nymphs probably have no places to hide and they risk getting eaten by the adults. I think it was called frass. Like, I remember someone saying frass before. Fine powdery refuse or fragile perforated wood produced by the activity of boring insects. Do insects really get that bored till they poop? So when they're bored, they poop? What? The excrement of insect larvae. No. Roaches are not insect larvae. Roaches are roaches. I think this is wrong. I don't know, but all I can remember is their poop is something along the lines of frass. But I guess that's not really important, let's just refer to that as poop. So like I said, you want to prevent the poop from getting moldy, so keep it as dry as possible. Now, what to feed these guys? Now, these guys are roaches, so you don't really have to bother what you feed them. There was once I fed them my leftover bologna spaghetti, and they loved it. But as a staple, I usually feed them rabbit food, rabbit pellets. I'll show you how that looks like in a Google picture because I just ran out of them. This is what I feed them over here. These are rabbit pellets. There we go. They're like little long brown stuff made from alfalfa. So these are very good for roaches as a staple, because you don't want to feed roaches something that's really high in protein like dog food or cat food, because Dubia roaches are already very high in protein themselves, and if you feed them too much protein, they will release uric acid, which in return gives your animals, your reptiles, gout. So this is what's gonna be the consequence for your animals if you feed your roaches too much protein. Gout is a common disease among reptiles, including snakes, iguanas, monitor lizards, and tortoises. Gouts can occur in the level of uric acid in the blood exceeds the ability for the kidneys to remove it. Now this is something, well, it sounds something very serious, so you don't want to mess this up. When you're feeding your roaches, you can either toss your food like in one corner and they'll come and eat, or you can use a food bowl. But if you use a food bowl, remember I mentioned that they can't climb smooth surfaces? So if you use a food bowl that has smooth surfaces, you want to use a sandpaper to roughen the sides so they can climb in and out. And don't forget to do it on the, don't forget to do it on the inside as well. If not, they climb in and they can't come out. So that's gonna be a problem. Do it on the insides and outsides. Scratch it with sandpaper. Same thing with the water dish. You wanna scratch the insides and the outsides. I mean the insides and the outsides. I'll get to these water stuff in just a bit. Can you feed vegetables to your dubias? Well, yes you can, but I wouldn't do it too often because I noticed with my dubias, I'm not sure about your dubias, but my dubias, if they eat too much vegetable, especially carrots or even watery fruits like papaya or pineapple, their poop starts to be really watery, and when they poop out watery poop, it's nasty. Mold will start growing in their poop. Back to the mold topic again. You don't want that to happen. So as for me, I try my best to limit my dubias when it comes to fruits and vegetables. I mean, if you before you feed them to your animals, you can feed them fruits and vegetables because they are a good gut load. They have lots of vitamins and good stuff in them. So that's the good part of vegetables. But if you're gonna feed vegetables and fruits as a staple, I wouldn't really do that because, like I mentioned, they poop out wet stuff, which is never good. Oranges. Now, there will be some point in your dubia keeping career that people are going to tell you that oranges are one way to boost roach breeding, but for me, I think it's a myth because for me, my dubias have been breeding super well without oranges. I fed them oranges and it didn't really make a difference for me. But so far, oranges hasn't made my roaches sick in any way. They've been doing really well even feeding them oranges. Just that oranges aren't too cheap where I'm at, so I don't really feed them often. When someone claims that something can be beneficial, although it's a myth and I don't see any difference, I still continue to feed them. I don't like stop feeding because it's a myth. But since it doesn't harm my roaches, I still continue feeding it because, yeah, if someone claims it's good, there may be something in this thing that is good, even though I think it's a myth. There is one thing, however, that, hey, look at that guy, he's really eating his spinach. But yeah, there's one thing, however, that I wouldn't feed my dubias, and that is cucumbers. Why? Because when I bought my dubias, the guy who sold it to me said that people use cucumbers to kill roaches. So I wouldn't take the risk, although I've heard many people who use cucumbers with success, with no dead roaches from the cucumber. But as for me, I like to stay on the safe side. If someone tells me that something is bad for something, and so happens that that thing is not beneficial, it doesn't benefit the roaches in any way, just another food source. So if that one person tells me that something is bad, but 100 people still uses it, and it's not beneficial to the roaches anyway, I will still not use it because I want to stay on the safe side. I'm really paranoid when it comes to all these things because I believe that everything is fine till they're not. So if let's say one day you continue feeding your roaches cucumbers and they have been perfectly fine since the day you got them, but one day they come up with some allergic reaction, which is highly unlikely, it's just an example, all the roaches are just gonna die. So when someone says something is bad for my animals, I will try to stay away from it. This varies from situation to situation, but when it comes to my animals, I really want to keep them on the safe side. Okay, now we're moving to the water source. Oh, it's a dead guy. Why did he die in the water? These here are water crystals. I'm pretty sure you've heard of them. A lot of people who keep dubias, they give them water crystals as a water source. Why? It's because they won't drown. If you give them standing water, they're just gonna go in and drown. Yeah, these guys are dumb that way. They can't swim. So yeah, don't give them anything that's fully liquid. So these water crystals are actually for plants, and they come like this. They're like little marbles, little beads. And when you put them in water and wait for about 45 minutes to an hour, they absorb water and they turn into these little nice balls. There are some water crystals that are mushy. A lot of people use those for their dubias, but these work equally as well. And if you're wondering where I buy these, I get them on eBay. So what you have to search is you just type in water crystal soil and these will come out. So see, it's really cheap. You can buy 2,000 for just $1 and it's free shipping. So who doesn't like cheap stuff? Now these eBay water crystals so far have been no problem. I don't think they have fertilizers, but you can also go to your local pharmacy. No, not pharmacy, nursery, that's it. Nursery where you buy plants. They will sell all these, but make sure that there are no fertilizers or chemicals. Read the packaging. If there's fertilizers, don't buy them because they can be harmful to your roaches. Oh yes, there's one thing that I have to tell you. A lot of people are gonna tell you, hey, go get a sponge, soak it in water, put it in your dubias, and they will drink from it. No, no, no. Sponges, these things are your enemies. These are enemies to dubias because these things harbor bacteria. I even know people that ask me to use, why don't I use sponges for my tarantulas, because they're gonna drown in my water dish, which I will get into another video. I'll explain about tarantulas and drowning in another video. But no, sponges is not the way to go. Your animal, your tarantula is not gonna drown in a water dish, okay? Sponges are just gonna be nasty, full of bacteria, and mold will grow in your sponge. Now we're gonna talk about maintenance, okay? You're gonna have to maintain your dubia bin. Although these are roaches and they're pretty clean, like I mentioned, you still want to keep their enclosures as clean as possible. And you're gonna do that by cleaning out the entire bin. Like take out every egg crate and replace them. Wash out the bin and put them back into their new clean enclosure. You want to do this every couple months depending on your colony size. And like I mentioned earlier, don't clean out 100% of their poop because these are what the nymphs, the babies, rely on. I'm not going to show you how I clean my dubias today because I cleaned it like a month ago and they are still pretty clean. But what you'll want is, if you want to separate poop and the dubias, get a bucket, a bin or bucket, and poke holes on the bottom. Just nice for the poop to sift through and leave the baby dubias inside the bucket. When you're cleaning out the bin, like disinfecting stuff, you don't want to use soap and detergent because those things have chemicals that can be harmful to your roaches unless you use some organic one, which I don't see why you should because they're expensive and these are roaches. You can use a very mild bleach solution or even hydrogen peroxide. That worked as well. Just soak them in the tub for about, or you can spray them, doesn't matter. But yeah, keep them in for about 15 minutes to half an hour. And then you want to thoroughly wash everything out. Don't leave any residue inside because that again can harm your roaches. But to be honest with you guys, man, instead of using all these chemicals, the best is still you just pour in hot water and let it sit in there. It'll kill germs, it's not harmful, it's just water, so that's still the best. But always make sure that the tub is 100%, if not more. 100% dry before you put your roaches back in, because as soon as you put them back in, they're going to start to poop. And you don't want the poop to collect water and grow mold. I don't want to go back into the mold topic because I've already said enough for mold. But yeah, keep the tub clean and dry at all times. So that will be it for my dubia video. I'm pretty sure that this video is very long, but I hope I covered almost everything, most of the things that you'll have to know about dubias. If I haven't, please comment down below for those who keep dubias and know how to care for them. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Hopefully you found it helpful as well. If you did, comment something, maybe share this video for other people so they'll know more about dubias. And yeah, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you guys in the next video.